Chapter 6. The phone was ringing. Not even looking at the screen, Derek lifted it up to his ear automatically. Yes? You have to come now, Cynthia demanded in his ear. Derek ran a hand over his face and stared at the ceiling. Well, he would be staring at the ceiling, except that it was the wee hours of the morning and everything in his room was dark, except for the cell phone which he could cheerfully toss away right now. Why? Just come. It's an emergency. Cynthia's voice was panicked. Derek groaned and sat up. Is anyone bleeding? No, she sniffed a little pathetically. Great. The dragon was sniffling. He bet it was just allergies. Derek put his head in his available hand. Does anyone need to go to the hospital? No. Her voice was a little whiny. Derek, just get here. Is anyone missing? He asked in a reasonable voice, including the pets. No. Then why do you need me there? He bit out. He had been up until 1 a.m, and now it wasn't even 4. Nothing about what I'm hearing constitutes an emergency. I still have to go through the specifics of the Underhill case, and I'd love to get more than 2 hours of sleep in a row. There was another sniffle. It was louder this time and more pronounced. What is it? He sighed and asked more patiently. The little monsters put gum in my hair, she whispered. Right at the front, down to the roots. I can't get it out. I'm going to have to be shaved bald. Derek couldn't help but laugh. He fell back on the bed, laughing long and hard. It's not funny, she wailed over the phone. That's the funniest thing I've heard all week, he gasped, trying to drag in air. Derek wiped his eyes. That's easy for a guy to say. Guys don't care if they have to shave their heads. Cynthia was miserable, her voice coming out all wobbly. I'm going to look just awful. You're going to look fine. Derek got up, grabbing his clothes. I know how to fix this. By fixing it, you mean something that doesn't involve scissors and a shaver? She asked hopefully. I promise you will keep your hair and I will get the gum out. He had a tired chuckle as he dressed. I'll see you in a bit. He ended the call, ordered a cab, and headed toward the kitchen. Derek was startled to see roomie number 2, Nick, or Ned, eating cereal at the table. Hungry? Derek asked as he grabbed a jar out of the cupboard. Has she got you hopping again? Nick, or Ned, raised an eyebrow. Yep. Derek fished out his keys and grabbed his shoes. You might as well live out of a box for all the time you spend here. Why do you even have a room? He was curious. I ask that every time I hand over the rent money. Derek shrugged and headed out the door. He supposed he could have clarified just what the roommate's name actually was, but he just didn't care. Not at 4 a.m. A long cab ride later, he stood outside Cynthia's new abode. Derek called her on his phone, and she ripped open the door when he told her he was waiting outside. Why didn't you just ring the doorbell? She demanded impatiently. I didn't want to wake the kids, Derek replied. He smirked as he saw the gum. The kids had used a pretty big wad. Cynthia must be a heavy sleeper not to have noticed them putting it in. Nice hair. She grabbed his arm and dragged him inside. Please tell me you weren't joking when you said you could fix this. Derek held up the jar of peanut butter. I got this. What? She looked at him like he had lost his mind. Get me a comb and a couple of towels. Derek was confident. I've done this before. Someone put gum in your hair? Cynthia questioned. No. He tossed off his shoes and coat in the mudroom. But I knew a couple girls in foster care who got gum in their hair from some other nasty kids. This was their remedy. You were in foster care? She was surprised. He'd never mentioned that before. Derek froze for a moment, then shrugged, heading to the bathroom. He really must be tired. Usually he never talked about his past. It was better that way. It was a long time ago. Why were you in foster care? Cynthia persisted as she followed him. Why are most kids in foster care? Either their parents or relatives can't take care of them, or there's no one at all. Derek said the words as a matter of fact, without any emotion or inflection. He scooped a comb out of a drawer and grabbed a towel. You should probably sit down. She flipped the seat on the toilet down and sat. So, which were you? What do you mean? He pretended to deliberately misunderstand. Using 2 hair clips from the girl's drawer of hair items, he clipped the towel to her shoulders to form sort of a cape to protect her silk pajamas, just in case he dropped any peanut butter. It wasn't the easiest, since it was a little more than a slip with spaghetti straps that ended up mid-thigh. It said something as to how tired Derek was, because he couldn't even appreciate the view that was in front of him. Why she would answer the door in that, then cover up with a robe, he didn't know. Derek dipped 2 fingers in the jar, and enjoyed plopping the glob onto the crown of Cynthia's head. That almost made up for her waking him up. "Did you have people who wouldn't take care of you, or no one at all?" she persisted, scrunching up her face as she tried to watch what he was doing in the mirror. "How old were you?" He massaged the peanut butter around the gum. 10. There was no one worth remembering. "What happened?" Cynthia persisted in asking questions. Derek clenched his jaw against any memories intruding. He worked so hard that he rarely ever had nightmares anymore. He preferred it that way. "I don't talk about it." "Why not?" She was curious. Of course she was curious. This was Cynthia, who was used to having her questions answered. No doubt she'd keep worrying at this like a dog with a bone. Too bad she was going to be disappointed. Just drop it. Derek tried to keep his tone neutral. He didn't succeed, since some bitterness crept in. Finally, the gum started moving, and he was able to slowly make progress on slipping it through the strands of hair. "You might as well just tell me," Cynthia huffed. "I'm going to find out." "I sincerely hope not." He spread a little more peanut butter in her hair. Some because she needed it to glide the gum out. Some more just because he could. "I'm a lawyer. I can go to social services and request information about you," she said as a matter of fact. She knew a good number of caseworkers and social workers. Some of them owed her favors. Cynthia had no doubt that she could uncover his case file. Derek realized where her thoughts were headed. If she found out the truth, she'd never look at him the same. No one ever did. There were days where he couldn't look at himself normally. He pulled the gum from her hair and dropped it in the trash. Grabbing the comb, he pulled out as much of the peanut butter as he could, wiping it on some toilet paper. "Aren't you going to say anything?" Cynthia looked up at him. "What is there to say?" Derek could feel the old desolation creeping in. He washed the comb, put the towel and the clips away. He didn't look at her. "You'll do what you want to do anyways. Nothing I say is going to convince you to stop, even though I told you to drop it. Some things are better off not knowing, Cyn. If you have any respect for me, you won't go there." "It can't be that bad," she scoffed. "Wait, what did you just call me?" "You'll want to wash your hair. Peanut butter is oily," he advised, ignoring her question. Derek left the washroom, grabbing his coat. He paused to put on his shoes. "I'm still your boss, you know," Cynthia insisted as she followed him. "Just because you're fishing gum out of my hair doesn't mean you get to call me by my first name." "How could I forget?" Derek said dryly. "Where are you going?" Cynthia trailed him. "Aren't you going to stay and help me with the terrors in the morning?" "Seriously?" He cocked his head and looked at her. "Why? I'm sure you're more than capable of handling it. It's only an hour until they start getting up. You might as well just stay, and we can go over some of the specifics of the Underhill case," she said. "Plus, I need to know the going rate on the Tooth Fairy." Goodbye sleep, Derek thought to himself with a small pain. "How much did you give, Sarah?" 20. But I'm wondering if that isn't a bit too much," Cynthia frowned. $20? Derek laughed. "That's a serious accounting error. You know she's got lots more loose teeth coming, right? Give her $1 each." "Well, I didn't know." Cynthia felt a little defensive. "I've never done this whole momming thing." "Haven't you ever been around kids? Can't you remember being one? Or was that too long ago?" Derek knew the minutes the word inferring her to be old had left his mouth, it was a mistake. "Thanks," she said dryly, her mouth drawn in a thin line of unamusement. Crud. He ran a hand down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm tired and it just came out. I didn't mean it." "Whatever," Cynthia said crisply. "I know I'm clueless when it comes to kids. I just figured when I had my own I would know what to do. Then I got too old and now I've got 5 dumped on me, and I don't know what to do." First of all, Derek eyed her body with the silky nightgown. "You're not too old. What are you, 35? Second, these kids weren't dumped on you. They're given to you with the firm belief that you're more than capable of taking care of them." "I'm 42, she said shortly. "I just gave a 7-year-old $20 for 1 tooth." "All parents make mistakes," he shrugged. "As long as the kids haven't died, needed a hospital visit, aren't abused, and are fed, I'd say it's a successful day. We better exchange the cash before she wakes up, otherwise you'll have set a precedent." "I suppose so." She frowned in annoyance. It was such a pain to make sure she didn't wake up the first time I snuck in her room, though. Derek put off his shoes and stood. "If you want me to hang around, then you need to put a robe on or some clothes." "What?" She looked at him, surprised. "I'm covered." "That is not covered." He gave her another long look, liking what he saw, knowing that he shouldn't be looking. "You're supposed to be an example to these kids?" She rolled her eyes. "Like it makes any difference. I don't exactly scream sexy to anyone. You, of all people, know my love life is as dry as the desert." Was he really going to do this? Was he stupid and tired enough to lack judgment? Apparently, yes, Derek thought to himself as he crowded her space. Is that what you really think? She didn't back away. Cynthia tilted her head up to look at him. "Except for Carl, there's been nothing happening. Guys don't like me." Carl was an idiot. He trailed a finger down her cheek and watched her eyes darken. Good. She wasn't the only one feeling this way. Men send you signals that they're interested all the time. You just don't seem to realize it. "What kind of signals?" she asked a little breathlessly. He ignored the question, leaning down and slanting his mouth over hers. It was like a spark that ignited a raging bonfire. She tasted too good, like that cinnamon herbal tea she liked so much. It didn't take much to back her up against all the coats hanging on the wall. She was exactly the right size against him, and he just knew that she'd be a perfect fit. Cynthia had complained about being a dry desert when it came to her love life. Well, he'd been trapped there the entire time with her in that arid place, and now the two of them were threatening to set the whole thing alight. Derek reached for the edge of the warm silk nightie. He'd been wanting to pull it off ever since he'd stepped in the door. Just as his hands met the material, he heard a noise and lifted his head. "Aunt Cynthia, look what the tooth fairy brought me!" Sarah shrieked, gap tooth, waving the $20 bill around as she danced in her onesie. Stupid, 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 stupid. Derek released Cynthia and stepped back, putting distance between himself and her. He ran a hand through his hair and tried to find some equilibrium back. She was his boss. What had he been thinking? "Wow, Sarah, that's great," Cynthia said with fake enthusiasm. "What were you two doing?" Sarah asked a little suspiciously. "Dancing," Derek responded. "Checking his fillings?" Cynthia said at the same time. "Ew." Sarah wrinkled her nose. "Don't ever check my fillings that way." "We won't," Derek promised, shooting Cynthia a look. Even with peanut butter in her hair, she still looked delicious. He checked his watch. "Sweetie, it's only 5. You could get another hour's sleep, or play with your toys until you need to get up for school." "I'm hungry," she announced gleefully. "Pancakes it is." Derek offered her his hand, and Sarah took it. Part of him was grateful for the escape the little girl was offering him. He had no idea what to say to Cynthia. "Do you have any blueberries?" "I don't know. We can check the fridge," Sarah happily replied. Cynthia watched Derek and Sarah walk away. She was still leaning against the coats hooked into the wall. She used a hand to fan her face. Wow. Just wow. She'd always known Derek had potential. Frankly, it was the reason she'd hired him. Eye candy walking through her door. Back then, 8 years ago, Cynthia had thought she'd have a fling with him, then send him packing for a real paralegal to help her with her work. 2 weeks in, she'd realized, as good as eye candy Derek was, he was the best paralegal she'd ever met. He could also put up with her, which she acknowledged was a rare gift. So she'd knocked off any thought of flirting and had gone all in with business. Derek had matched her step for step, even though she knew that over the years he'd come to hate his job. He had staying power and determination. Cynthia admired him for that, even if she didn't know why he stayed working for her. Now they'd just changed the entire dynamic of their relationship. Her body felt flushed. Double wow. Cynthia pulled away from the wall to find a robe. She had delicate little minds to protect, as Derek had reminded her. Plus, what she'd just seen as a nightgown, Derek had made her feel sexy in. Cynthia hadn't felt sexy in a long time. Even on that day with Carl, she'd felt like she was trying too hard. It was part of her problem. She tended to try too hard. That was why she'd been passed over for senior partner at the firm. Or at least, that was what her uncle had told her. Cynthia was disappointed. She'd been striving for that job for years. Could she still work so hard when she had 5 kids to take care of? Cynthia knew that something was going to have to give. She just didn't know what. She decided to leave Derek in charge and have a shower to wash the peanut butter out of her hair. What sort of guy found a woman kissable when her hair was an oily mess? As she stepped under the hot water, her mind focused on the enigma that was Derek Kramer. Even though he spent as much as 20 hours a day with him, Cynthia found that she didn't know him particularly well. She knew what food he liked to eat. She knew what sort of work he was most proficient at. She knew he could have a dark sense of humor. Cynthia didn't know anything about his childhood, except that he'd been in foster care and didn't want her prying into it. Let's be honest, she reflected. She was going to find out what happened. It was just a matter of time. Cynthia hadn't known that he would be good with kids. Everything about his manner had suggested he would just find them annoying little things. Yet here he was, making pancakes and telling bedtime stories. He would make an excellent dad someday. For some reason, the thought did not appeal to her. Not in being a dad, that was fine. More like that he'd have to have a relationship with a woman to be a dad. Cynthia frowned. Okay, she admitted to herself. She'd been deliberately keeping him busy so that he wouldn't have time to go on dates and have relationships. He was hers. Not in a relationship way, but Cynthia had jealousy issues, and she'd never shared her toys. Alicia and she had argued over this facet of her personality all the time. They'd argued a lot. Alicia had been a homemaker, a housewife, a mother. She loved what she did and tried constantly to mother Cynthia, who had only been 3 years her junior. Cynthia had rebelled against all the mothering and had gone on to the business world where she was determined to prove herself. Only, who exactly was she proving herself to? Cynthia turned off the shower, wrapped a towel around herself, and went in search of clothes. Lately, she'd been discovering that, while she had Derek at her beck and call business-wise, she was lonely. Her condo was beautiful, but empty. She wasn't going to make senior partner. The next opening wouldn't be for another 20 years unless one of the other partners became ill and needed to retire early. That was a long time in a career for nothing to happen. She'd gone on the date with Carl, even as she'd felt something was off about him, because she was lonely. Cynthia admitted that Alicia might have been right. Life alone was no life at all. So what did she want? What could she do now that she had 5 kids in her life? She had at least 17 years of caregiving to give to them if she made the commitment to keep them. How did single moms find guys willing to take on not 1, but 5 children who weren't theirs? Cynthia thought about Derek. He was younger than her. She wasn't exactly sure how young, but he was definitely fine. The question was, what did she want from him? Moreover, what did she want for herself? Her life had changed, and she wasn't certain how she was going to cope with it. Derek raided the fridge with Sarah. By the time the other kids were up, he was ready with pancakes and fruit. The table had been set, and everyone had a chance at a decent breakfast. He was mildly proud of himself, even if it was only breakfast. He rarely cooked since his college days. Then that had been his chick magnet, being a guy who cooked and did dishes. Nowadays, he just didn't have time. "Are you her boyfriend?" Simon asked Derek curiously. "What?" Derek paused, feeling a bit like a deer in headlights. "No, I'm her paralegal." "What's a paralegal?" He poked at the berries in his pancake. It was Simon's 5th one, so Derek didn't feel bad. "I do lots of lawyer stuff without being a lawyer." Derek really didn't know how else to explain it. Help your aunt do her job well. "So you're basically her minion," Simon stated as he pushed up his glasses. "Something like that," Derek said wryly. "Does that include housework?" Simon chewed a piece of pancake, blinking at Derek. "No." Derek frowned. He sensed a trap was coming. "I hope not." "Why?" "'Cause laundry is piling up," Simon informed Derek. "I'm pretty sure I heard Serena yelling about clean underwear this morning." "Doesn't she know how to run a washing machine?" Derek looked at Simon in confusion. "She's 14 and you're 12. You should both know how." "Nope." Simon fed the last of the pancake to Boomer, who was waiting patiently, panting beside the boy. "Mom always did it." "Great." Derek sighed. "Well, today after school, you're both getting a crash course." "Does that mean you're going to be around after school?" "I would think so." Derek didn't think that Cynthia felt comfortable alone with the kids yet. It meant that she would likely want him to bring work here to the house so that she wouldn't have to deal with them alone. Not that they tended to get a lot of work finished with 5 kids demanding time. Derek wondered that he hadn't been repeating his mantra of needing a new job very much lately. Probably because he was entertained to see how Cynthia was coping with the new challenges in her life. Cool. Simon grabbed one of the bagged lunches off the counter and headed toward his room to get ready for school. Derek popped another bologna sandwich into a brown sack. Since Cynthia had disappeared, he decided to make lunches for the kids as well. He hoped no one had any preferences or allergies, especially since the fridge was starting to get low on necessities. Some shopping needed to get done. Derek eyed the living room. Some cleaning needed to happen as well. Sean's Lego creations were everywhere, creating a stepping hazard, not to mention all of Serenity's baby toys. Frowning, Derek grabbed a tub and started gathering up the stuff. "Hey, Mr. Mom," Serena said, "can I get a 20 for lunch?" 20 for lunch? Derek raised an eyebrow. "I'm pretty sure cafeteria food doesn't cost that much. Besides, I made lunches. You can grab one of the brown bags from the kitchen." Serena wrinkled her nose. She looked a lot like her aunt when she was displeased. "I want to go downtown with my friends for lunch." "Still isn't going to cost you $20. Derek scooped up a couple of dolls, adding them to his pile. "Are you a little young to be going downtown?" "Mom let me do it all the time," she protested with a pout. Derek narrowed his eyes and looked at her. "Really?" "Yeah," Serena said sullenly. "Try again." Derek sensed she was lying. "No, not happening." "That's so unfair!" Serena stamped her foot. "Grab the bag." He pointed to the neat row of lunches on the counter. "Don't even think of going to your aunt over this." Serena snapped up a bag and groused as she looked inside. "Really? Bologna? Isn't there anything else?" "You could look in the fridge and make your own lunch," Derek suggested. It didn't hurt his feelings any if she did. He wouldn't mind a bologna sandwich for lunch. She cracked open the fridge door. "There's nothing to eat." "I don't know." Derek folded a blanket that had been discarded on the floor. "If you're really inventive, olives and peanut butter sandwiches aren't bad." "Ugh!" Serena shut the fridge and stomped away, taking the bagged lunch with her. Derek quickly pulled out his cell phone and speed-dialed Cynthia. "You're in the same house as me? You could just knock on the bedroom door," Cynthia drawled as she answered his call. "Serena's coming to ask for cash for lunch. She doesn't need it." Derek went straight to the point. 1, because $20 is extortion for a simple lunch. 2, because she's too young to be heading downtown with her girlfriends for lunch period. If she says her mom used to let her, she's lying. "How do you know?" Cynthia asked curiously. "Trust me," Derek responded confidently. "I had a childhood full of lying kids." "Excuse me, I'm on the phone, Serena." Cynthia's voice became muffled. "I have to go." "Remember," Derek said firmly, "no cash unless cafeteria, which should cost 10. No downtown." "Gotcha." Cynthia hung up. Derek hoped she wouldn't let herself get wheedled out of the money or talked into allowing Serena to do things she shouldn't. He caught sight of Sean. "Pants, little dude. You need to wear pants." "I'm hot," Sean responded plaintively. Derek shook his head. "I'm wearing pants. You get to wear pants too." Sean sighed. He narrowed his eyes at Derek as if deciding if he should try to defy him. "Let's go pick out some pants." Derek held out a hand and waited. After a moment, Sean's shoulders drooped, and he grabbed Derek's hand. A successful 5 minutes later, they had chosen green pants with a dinosaur on it. Derek got Serenity up and ready for the day. Soon, she and Sean were happily eating breakfast. He rapped on Sarah's door. "Hey, Toothless, you ready for school yet?" A giggle greeted him as she swung open her door. "I'm not toothless. I'm just missing one." "What are you going to do with your newfound wealth?" he asked. "I'm going to buy a pony," Sarah said happily. "Wow," Derek nodded. "Good luck with that. Ready for final inspection?" "I need you to do my hair." She held out her arms and twirled. "Otherwise, I'm all dressed and have my backpack." "Cool. Get me a brush and meet me in the kitchen." Derek wondered why it seemed like the kids were always coming to him rather than Cynthia. She was their aunt. He shrugged and went back to the kitchen to supervise the smaller two. "Ready for a big day at daycare?" Sean nodded, blueberries smeared on his face. "I'm going to play trucks today." "That is a good idea," Derek agreed easily with the little boy. "Trucks are fun." "Yeah, trucks are fun." Sean stuffed another piece of pancake into his tiny body. How do you do it? Cynthia looked at the mess in the kitchen. It's like a bomb went off in here. Don't worry. 5 kids, 1 adult, and 1 dog got fed. Derek frowned. Have you seen the other dog? Isn't it called Digger? No, I haven't seen it. Cynthia sat down. She looked perfect as usual. Would you be offended if I don't eat? He set a cup of coffee in front of her. 1 less set of dishes. I'm here, Sarah screeched to a halt, holding out the brush. What are we doing today, Sprite? Derek took the brush and pulled out a kitchen chair. Sarah hopped up onto the chair, holding out a scrunchie. Ponytail! Ponytail it is, he began confidently brushing her hair. Where did you even learn that? Cynthia frowned as she watched him. This was a whole new side of Derek that she'd never seen before. It's not hard to brush hair. As long as she doesn't ask for anything fancy, I'm sure we'll be fine, Derek smirked. While I'm taking care of your kids, want to load the dishwasher? Cynthia gave a shudder. Let the maid do it. Cyn, in case you haven't noticed, there is no maid, no cook, no housekeeper, no laundry service or pet walkers, Derek said wryly as he twisted back Sarah's hair, capturing it in the hideously bright pink scrunchie. That's something you either need to hire or learn to do yourself. Thanks, Sarah sang in her high little voice, jumping off the chair and running away. Why would I learn to do it? Cynthia smiled sweetly. She kind of liked the way he called her Cyn. Have you? No. Derek said this firmly. He started putting dirty dishes into the dishwasher, pans going into the sink. What do you mean, no? Cynthia asked with a frown. I cannot be your paralegal, PA, cook, and bottle washer. He shrugged, popping a blueberry into his mouth. I won't. I'll never sleep. I barely function and sleep as it is. Thankfully, Missy is back Monday. Missy quit. Cynthia lobbed that little bit of truth out to see how he'd react. She'd been hiding that fact for the past 2 weeks. What? Derek stopped and looked at her gobsmacked. What did you just say? She quit, she repeated. She absently took a pancake and started cutting it delicately. She hated working for me. So do you, but you happen to stay. Who said I hate working for you? He frowned. He couldn't believe that Missy wasn't coming back. It was tantamount to treason in his books. I sent birthday flowers to that ungrateful wretch. Wonder if I can cancel that yet. You say it every day, multiple times a day. Cynthia arched an eyebrow. Don't think I haven't noticed you muttering about how you need another job as you work around the office. Derek shrugged, feeling a little defensive. He had no idea that she knew his feelings on the subject. Lots of people hate their job but stick with it. However, you need to hire a new PA immediately. You should have been trying to hire one the moment she quit, instead of logging me down with all her work as well. You'll get around to it. She munched on the pancake. Theirs are quite good. No. He pointed a spatula at her before putting it in the dishwasher and running a washcloth under the tap. You will hire your PA. It's your responsibility. I choose to delegate. Cynthia took a sip of coffee and enjoyed another bite. No, Derek said again, wiping Sean's mouth with the damp cloth. I don't have time. Then I guess you'll just have to keep doing PA duties since I'm not going to lift a finger. Cynthia pointed at the pancakes as she took another. What do you put in these? Derek looked up and prayed for a bit of patience. A wicked thought came to him, and he smiled. Okay, fine. I'll hire your PA. Cynthia frowned in concern. She didn't like his sudden about-face on the subject. What is that little smile about? What are you planning? You'll see. He wiped Serenity's face and hands. He was going to find the most annoying PA possible. One that was good at the job but had an impressively bad habit. Or bad personal hygiene. Or maybe a weird laugh. The possibilities were endless. Interviews were going to be such fun. I don't think I like this turn of attitude. Cynthia contemplated as she watched Derek a little suspiciously. He ignored her and yelled up the stairs. Van is leaving in 5. If you don't make it to the van, you get to come to the office with me where you'll be impressively bored and the only thing I'll let you do is staple papers. Get a move on. Staple papers? Sean said with some interest. Not you, buddy, Derek replied. You might staple your pants. Besides, you said it was truck day. He nodded solemnly. Truck day. Stapling papers? That's your threat? A smile tugged at Cynthia's mouth as she sipped the last of her coffee. A single sheet of paper and a stapler for 8 hours. It's the most boring thing anyone can do, and some people in the office can't even handle that. Derek wiped down the counter and table with a clean cloth. Who can't handle stapling papers? Cynthia rolled her eyes in disbelief. Bob the pygmy goat? Derek stopped abruptly and put a hand to his face. I shouldn't have said that. He's an okay guy. I'm just sleep-deprived. Who is Bob? She asked, suddenly interested. Bob? Who works at the office? He looked at her with some surprise. You know, the building that you work in as well? He lives in the cubicle farm with me and all the other cubicle people. Cynthia got up and put her cup in the sink. I like it when you're sleep-deprived. You say the most interesting things. She deliberately brushed her arm along his as she passed him in the narrow space between the island and the counter of the kitchen. Do you do that deliberately? Derek leaned against the counter and watched her. Cynthia tried to look innocent. What? Think up ways to deprive me of sleep to see what I'll say and do next? He frowned. Like, do you set an alarm and then call me just to make sure I'm still up and working? She laughed. If I really wanted to deprive you of your sleep, I'd let you into my... Cynthia stopped abruptly as Serena and Simon thundered down the stairs. Ready, Simon announced. Your what? Derek asked Cynthia curiously, wondering where she had been going with the conversation. She walked up to him, laid a hand on his chest, went on her tippy toes and whispered in his ear, Bed. Derek's jaw dropped as he stared at her. Having accomplished that, Cynthia gave him a little pat on the chest before walking away to get her purse and shoes. She made sure she put a little swing in her hips just in case he was watching her leave. I'll take the school route if you take daycare. Meet you back at the office. Derek swallowed hard. Sure thing. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, please look for the next chapter of Sweet Valentine. Also, please click the bell for notifications so that you don't miss any videos. This is free for you and would really help me grow my audience with the algorithms. Thank you. Sweet Valentine is also available on Amazon as an ebook, free through Kindle Unlimited, or as a paperback.